Coming to you live from my treadmill, as I do nearly every month, to answer any questions you may have. For those of you unfamiliar with my work, every year I read through every issue of every English language nutrition journal in the world. So busy, folks like you don't have to. I then compile the most interesting, most groundbreaking, most practical findings into new videos and articles I upload every day to my nonprofit site, nutritionfacts.org. Everything on the website is free. There are no ads. No corporate sponsorships, strictly non-commercial, not selling anything, just put it up as a public service, as a labor of love, as a tribute to my grandmother, whose own life was saved with evidence-based nutrition. Let us get to your questions. Rennie asks, does eating spirulina daily give you enough iodine? I recommend against spirulina because of toxins that have been found in spirulina products off store shelves. And so you can type in spirulina into nutritionfacts.org and that video will pop right up. Okay, let's see who else we got. Mike says, how do you prevent Alzheimer's disease? I have a whole chapter because Alzheimer's is the leading cause of death. In How Not to Die, I have the first half of the book is 15 chapters, and each of the 15 leading causes of death, talking about the role of diet. It may play in preventing, arresting, or reversing our top 15 killers, including Alzheimer's, which has risen sadly high in the ranks. 4 million Americans now affected. The best thing we can do is prevent it. Although, interestingly, Dean Ornish right now, has a study ongoing trying to see if we can reverse the course of Alzheimer's disease with a plant-based diet. I'm eagerly looking forward to seeing a publication of that data. But in the meanwhile, got a bunch of videos. Just type in Alzheimer's and nutritionfacts.org or check out the book at your local public library. All proceeds from all the sales of all my books is all donated to charity. All right, what else we got? Joshua asked, does broccoli sprouts help to avoid autism? And you say, well, that sounds like a strange question. Not a strange question at all, because there was a randomized controlled trial of broccoli sprouts for treating the core symptoms of autism, something that no drug has ever been able to show to do. But guess what? Broccoli could do it. And so the questioner's like, well, wait a second, what about preventing it in the first place? Well, I talk about the possibility in my video series on broccoli sprouts for autism. The bottom line has not been put to the test, but certainly cannot hurt to eat cruciferous vegetables every day. So critical, in fact, that it's one of my daily dozen. On my daily dozen checklist of all the healthiest of healthy foods, I encourage people to fit into their daily diet. That's found in the second half of How Not to Die, or available free in a free app called Dr. Greger's Daily Dozen, which is found on iPhone, Android. Check it out. Okay, what do we got next? We have Rennie, who asks, is it necessary to apply sunscreen in the summer, and what SPF is best? Does it help prevent skin cancer? Is it necessary to apply? It is necessary. I would encourage people to do a number of factors to reduce excess sun exposure, such as wearing a hat and using a broad spectrum sunscreen, like something with zinc oxide in it, to prevent both UVA and UVB, to reduce one's risk of particularly nasty skin cancer called melanoma. Next up is Camille, who says, how do you recover from hypothalamic amenorrhea on a whole food plant-based diet? Well, you treat as always, you treat the cause. And so the question is, why? What do you have, a lesion in your hypothalamus that's preventing the right hormones being released? In which case, that's what you deal with, rather than trying to mediate the impact with a healthy diet. Okay, Nate says, dietary interventions for bipolar disorder. Oh, fantastic question. I don't think there are any. In fact, one of the reasons why I pushed back, so there are studies for generalized anxiety disorder and major depression, but not bipolar. There's lots of interventions, but not controlled dietary interventions. I guess unless you can include lithium, which I tend to think more of as a drug, but it's actually just an element. And so the reason I actually put my book on diet and mental health at the end of my queue of future books I'm going to write. So it'll be out December 2029, is because there's so little literature on it. You know me, my first book, How Not to Die, had 3,000 citations. How Not to Diet had 5,000 citations. How Not to Age, the one I'm working on now, looks like another 5,000 minimum. I like big books. So if I was writing the mental health book, it would be a skinny book. So I'm just waiting for more research to be done. Yeah. So this has yet to be put to the test. But eating healthier, guess what? Can't hurt. So I would encourage everybody, to give it a try. Okay. Avoki says, I have chronic indigestion acidity from a couple of weeks. Will probiotic supplements help? I would recommend, there's a bunch of things you can do for so-called dyspepsia. In fact, you should type in dyspepsia into nutritionfacts.org. All my videos will come up, which is kind of a fancy way of saying chronic indigestion. If you are getting acid reflux, then you can type in GERD, G-E-R-D, into nutritionfacts.org. All the videos will come up. And there's a bunch of things you can do about it, like decreasing the fat intake, which helps keep the lower esophageal sphincter tighter, and eating smaller meals, not eating before bed, and there's a whole bunch of things you can do. And so check out those resources. Okay, Francis says, what is the main reason why one's A1C fluctuates from high to low and high to low? That is, will a B12 supplement help with diabetic neuropathy? Okay, for those of you who are like, what is an A1C? It is a measure of kind of long-term blood sugar control over the last few months or so, but really biased towards kind of more recent events. And so the main reason is people are eating different foods. And although women can get hormonal changes throughout the month, that even if they're eating the same thing, they can have different blood sugar responses. So that could be one reason. If you're sick, you have really high blood pressures, even if you're kind of eating healthy. But typically, we tend to think of HbA1c as, in terms of diabetic control and how well medications are working. And for prediabetes or in general, it's typically what's happening with the diet. Primarily the glycemic load of different foods. And so I encourage people to cut out refined grains and things that cause too high of a blood sugar spike. Okay, Marcus says, big fan in Brazil of all places. Healthy 49-year-old vegan celiac disease. Is there anything I should be concerned about? Yes, you should be concerned about gluten because you have celiac disease. Oops, I accidentally clicked on the next question. But celiac disease patients who don't scrupulously avoid gluten actually live shorter lives. So that would be most important thing. Of course, as a vegan, got to get you B12. Can't hurt to, I actually have videos talking about, whether you should go and get annual testing or see an annual checkup. And basically the data says, no, you shouldn't. But if you haven't been, but that's for annual checkups. You don't need annual checkups, but you're definitely getting to an age where you need to start getting some preventive health services. Like, for example, I don't know what's happening down in Brazil, but here in the States, the colon cancer screening has been moved down to age 45. So I just got my colon cancer screening. I was waiting till age 50, but not with the change in guidelines from the USPSTF. And so, thankfully, I don't have colon cancer. But I'm going to get retested in 5 years. All right. Okay. Oh, this is Becky saying, what's the feeling on moringa? I actually have a moringa video coming up. And I actually recommend against moringa, surprisingly, a so-called drumstick tree. And so eat kale instead. That's the spoiler alert version. All right. What else we got? Okay, Rennie says, is sprouted chia bad? What are the best sprouts and words sprouts? What are the best? I don't know what the best sprout words are, but best sprouts, broccoli sprouts, right? Because it's cruciferous sprout, or red cabbage sprouts, or any kind of cruciferous sprout would be the best. And sprouted chia bed, yes. Why? Because of salmonella concerns. There have been salmonella outbreaks related to sprouted chia, so I would encourage people not to buy it. Next up, Jonah says, it says very sweet things. Eats a whole food plant-based diet for 5 months and highly plant-based for really a year now. Blood test showing slightly higher hemoglobin. I think I drink enough water. Graham, that is not those are not units I'm familiar with. But if you so I can't tell you if that's actually within the normal range or not. But if it is excessively high and you're not contracted, you're not dehydrated, then there's a condition that can kind of increase your red blood cell count, and that can increase your hemoglobin level. And so you want to make sure that that's not something you're suffering from. Okay, Key asks, advice on Raynaud's plant-based diet for 4 years, good cholesterol, that's nice. Don't worry about HDL because that's not a causal risk factor, but LDL definitely is. Nice and no calcium in your arteries, which means you don't have old heart disease. Raynaud's syndrome is where little arteries in your fingers can close off and cause really painful cold fingers. And I talk about, there's one video I talk about hesperin, which is a citrus bioflavonoid, and how that increases blood flow to the limbs. So you can actually measure blood flow in a finger, and you eat I assume it's an orange, but maybe some other citrus. I'd have to look at that video again, and you get a significant rise in peripheral blood supply. Whether that would actually help with Raynaud's can't hurt. I'd give it a try. So I would type in hesperin into or citrus in nutritionfacts.org, and that video should pop right up. Oh, speaking of, wanted to make sure I remember to tell everybody I have an upcoming webinar coming June 11th, just about 2 weeks from now, and we close registration like a week early. So if you're interested in this, do not wait to register. The webinar, it'll be 2 hours live. How much meat should we eat? If you go to nutritionfacts.org/webinars, you will read more detail about it. And if you want to, you can register. I believe it's at 2 p.m. Eastern time on June 11th. Okay, anyway, let's get to your next question. Okay, BLK says, type 2 diabetic. Oh, but eating healthy, wonderful. Not on meds, fantastic. Oh, but can't get glucose under control. And so one of the reasons may be you're still you're suffering insulin resistance from excess visceral fat. So if you have excess abdominal fat, it can spill fat in your bloodstream. And so even if you don't have it going into your mouth, you still have these high levels of fat in your blood, and that interferes with insulin responsiveness in your muscles and liver. And that's what causes type 2 diabetes, especially when it offloads fat to your poor pancreas and can destroy some of your insulin-producing cells. And so weight loss would be the next step. And if your glucose is not under control, you should indeed talk to your doctors about being on meds until something like metformin, until you can get it under control with diet, though it may take weight loss to drop your visceral fat to levels that where your insulin resistance drops enough that you can reverse your diabetes. Speaking of reversing diabetes, guess what? In less than a month, the New York City mayoral race is happening. Andrew Yang, I believe the two front runners, Andrew Yang versus Eric Adams, who reversed his diabetes with a plant-based diet. So we could have a plant-based mayor of New York City. I would encourage everyone to vote in the upcoming New York City mayoral race if you live in New York City. Anyway, that's just a... Oh, and he wrote a book called Healthy at Last, talking about his story of diabetes reversal on a plant-based diet. Okay, next up. Nancy White says, what's the best source to acquire AMLA? And for people who are like, what is AMLA? It is dried Indian gooseberries. I think I order everything online these days. I don't go out to shop too much anymore, certainly over the last year. I used to be able to get it in a little Indian spice store by my house. You can do that if you have such a thing. But since I moved to Seattle, I don't know. I don't think there's any Indian spice stores. I looked here in West Seattle, so I'd have to go downtown. But you can get online. Just type in AMLA or dried Indian gooseberries into your favorite internet retailer and get it that way. Okay, this is Ricardo saying, hi, ever since contracting COVID, 4 months ago, not been feeling the same. Yeah, diarrhea, 2 months, lost weight, fingernails white in the middle. My tongue also white. Sorry, this thing cuts off questions. And so there might be more stuff there, but it doesn't show up. These long-term side effects of COVID are no joke. People can suffer for months, maybe for years. We don't know yet. It hasn't been years, but this is one of the reasons why it's critically important that we get rid of this thing. How do we do it? Vaccines. Yesterday, I'm excited to say I got my second dose, and so in 13 days, I am going to be pretty much immune to COVID-19 and will not suffer months of symptoms because of a COVID-19 diagnosis. So a lot of people think, oh, I'm young and healthy. You know, it's mostly only the old people that die. So what's the problem? Well, no, you can get sick and suffer symptoms like poor Ricardo here for months. Most of us have enough problems in our lives without suffering from chronic symptoms. So all I can tell Ricardo is that we don't know how long it's going to last, and all you can do is eat healthy and take care of yourself and sleep well and exercise, all the standard things. And we just don't have any data on anything specific we can do to help. But for those of you who have not gotten COVID, we can get vaccinated. Okay, 3 asks, is there any way to naturally increase? Oh, this is a great question. And you're like, what is NAD? I got a whole chapter of that coming up in my book, How Not to Age. And I'm not trying to be dodgy. I just haven't written the chapter yet, and so I don't know what it says. But I have every article ever written on NMN and the riboside and all the various ways you can increase NAD and whether or not it's useful. I know some anti-aging researchers actually take it themselves. Is that smart? Is that stupid? We will find out and get to the bottom of it. I can't wait to that section because I want to know as much as you do. Okay, Mario says, it's better to try to check off as many boxes in daily dozen possible. Even on days when one's appetite is very low, or is more benefit to fasting come from low appetite days. So for those of you who are like, what, daily, what? Dr. Greger's Daily Dozen available free app, iPhone, Android. Just a checklist of all the healthy foods I encourage people to fit into their daily diet. And so this questioner is like, well, wait a second. Yes, I didn't eat my third serving of legumes today, but I'm not really hungry. What should I do? And do not force yourself to eat anything. If you're not hungry, don't eat. But the Daily Dozen checklist is actually on purpose to be actually hypocaloric. And so it's actually maybe like, depending. I have a whole chapter on this on how not to diet. I think it's like 500 calories less than what most people need. And so if you are full at the end of the day, eating the Daily Dozen, you're probably not just eating the Daily Dozen, right? And the reason that you're full is because you're eating other stuff too. And so if you just stick to the Daily Dozen, most people should actually, you should be full because it's a huge amount of food, but it's not a lot of calories. So it should be very satiating. But yeah, no. If you're not hungry, don't eat. Okay, Kunj asks, how do you eat a lot of calories? Oh, here we go. On the whole food plant-based diet. My meal time is exceeding few hours throughout the day. I assume means restricting. And so how do you eat a lot of calories? Well, typically the recommendation would be to kind of graze. So you have, if you're not getting enough calories, you eat high calorie density foods, healthy high calorie density foods, such as nuts, seeds, avocado smoothies, dried fruit. And so you could have like a trail mix, dried fruit, nuts. And that's why people take it hiking, right? It's non-perishable, it's light, packed with calories because you're hiking up a mountain. And so you can nibble on that all day. Have a bowl right in front of your computer and just kind of nosh all day. But if you're reducing your mealtime, well, then, yeah, you just have to pack it in during those few hours. But it'd be about getting calorie-dense foods into your diet. And, yeah, so that's the way to do it. Okay, Adrian says, recently discontinued a proton pump inhibitor after many years. Can I recommend salad dressings? Ooh, that sounds yummy. Or sauces or any other foods that don't aggravate reflux. I would refer you to my videos on GERD, G-E-R-D, gastroesophageal reflux disease. On nutritionfacts.org, I have a whole list of all the things you can do to reduce reflux symptoms. And so salad dressing would be the primary characteristic of the dressings that would reduce one's risk of reflux is low fat, because you can stick a pH probe down people's esophagus and have them, blinded pour different solutions down to their stomach, one with fat, one with protein, one with carbs, and you see that as soon as you add fat into your stomach, whether you know it or not, your lower esophageal sphincter relaxes. You can actually there's a little manometer, you can see it relax, you can see the acid creep up. So that's why low-fat meals are important for people with GERD. And there's all sorts of other things you can do as well. Check out the videos. Clint says, Dad seeing a cardiologist for his AFib. Any resource recommendations? I do have an AFib video coming up. That is a frequently asked question. And so I made sure to do a video about it. I'm not sure where it is in the queue. And if I didn't have a million questions flowing up, as you can see, these are all the, I've got gazillions of questions coming through. If I didn't have a gazillions of questions, I'd actually look it up and I could read through the script and tell you. But unfortunately, I want to get to another question. You just have to sign up at nutritionfacts.org, and so you'll get a notification when that video is up. Okay, does gluten-based EPI. Exocrine Pancreatic Insufficiency. If I blend nuts and seeds, can I skip digestive enzymes, fat malabsorption? Gluten-based. Does a gluten-based diet heal exocrine pancreatic insufficiency? So the exocrine functions of the pancreas help with digestion. And so would blended nuts and seeds skip digestive enzymes? No. No. I would talk to your GI doc. I don't think I have any videos on exocrine pancreatic insufficiency. I don't know what causes it, and my gut reaction is always treat the cause. So if I don't know what the cause is, it's hard for me to give you recommendations. Okay, Santanu says, with plant-based diet, reduce sugar substantially. I want to know, how do I reduce insulin resistance? Great. Current fasting insulin is 16, looking to reduce it. HDL has gone down. We don't worry about HDL because it's not a causal risk factor for heart disease. But if you want to reduce your insulin resistance, you decrease the cause of insulin resistance, which is excess saturated fat intake in the context of a hypercaloric diet, or excess visceral adiposity. If your waist measured at your belly button, is more than half your height. You need to lose weight to reduce that visceral fat and decrease insulin resistance, regardless of what you eat day to day. Okay, Peter, hello. I've had yellow diarrhea for 8 years. If I don't eat psyllium husks, it just runs through me. Is it my pancreas? It actually could be. I'm thinking more of kind of a bile situation, but actually feeds right through the same duct that the pancreas dumps out. So yeah, I would go to a gastroenterologist and find out what's going on with your bile pigments. Okay, a vegan world is inevitable. Asks, is the COVID vaccine safe? Whenever you ask, is X safe? It's like asking, is food X good for you? Well, it's like compared to what? What are the risks and benefits? What are the alternatives? The alternative to getting COVID vaccine is not getting a COVID vaccine. And so, okay, if you are a hermit that never comes in contact with anyone you care about, then you could argue to not get the vaccine. But if you live on Earth and come in contact with people you care about, or even people you don't care about, but you don't want to see them get sick, I would encourage everyone to get vaccinated because the risks of COVID-19, based on now literally tens of millions of people who've been vaccinated, outweighs the risk of the vaccine. Okay. Kirsch 2000 said, would the H5N1's mortality rate be lower than 55% because of the lack of recording asymptomatic cases at the time of outbreaks? What is the true number of total cases? Oh, I love this question. This is very high. I love these Q&As because we have people who are really smart. I'm not going to say which symposia I'm part of that actually have really not as smart questions, which are fine too, but it's fun to, I don't know. Anyway, so what this person is saying is that H5N1, this bird flu virus, seems to have this ridiculous, like 60% fatality rate. But I said, wait a second, maybe there's all these asymptomatic cases, so you don't know what the denominator number is. So maybe there's thousands of people who have been infected, but don't even show symptoms, and so that's way overblown. That is why studies have been done in a half dozen countries, which I document in How to Survive a Pandemic, where they actually went into a village where an outbreak and they tested everybody. They did serological tests of everybody. They took blood, looked for antibodies, looked for exposure to this virus, and they essentially found 0 asymptomatic cases, meaning we haven't been missing cases, and really the fatality rate of this bird flu virus really is that high. Can you imagine a virus that infects billions of people within a matter of a month with a flip of the coin fatality rate? That would end civilization as we know it. We need to dramatically change the food system to prevent the emergence of these highly pathogenic bird flu viruses. There's been 11 so far over the last few decades, newly emerging and blamed on industrial poultry production. We need to find another way to get food. Kale, seriously? That's awesome. I don't know if it's actually pronounced kale, but I would love to be named Kale. Do you think a plant-based diet will heal my ulcerative colitis over time? I want to be ideally go medication-free and currently on these drugs. And so I'm assuming you've seen my ulcerative colitis videos. I think all the new ones are up. I knew I had a whole batch of new ones. They may actually not be up. So they either are very recent or coming soon. And talking about what you can do for ulcerative colitis. And so, but just because we've seen some of the best relapse rates ever with a plant-based diet doesn't mean it's 100% perfect. But that's certainly the goal. And regardless of what kind of medications you are, you can always eat healthier to reduce your disease risk. Una says, aren't cruciferous vegetables already producing sulforaphane when they're harvested because they've been cut down? Does cutting them up more than cooking produce more of it when cooking? Okay, so there's another fantastic question. Okay, sulforaphane is produced by a precursor compound mixing with an enzyme, which is socked away in a separate compartment within the plant cell, and only when that plant is crushed, that cell is crushed or cut, do those two mix and sulforaphane is produced. And so you say, well, wait a second. Obviously, I don't get the whole plant. You just get a broccoli crown. So that's cut. So isn't there sulforaphane being produced? Yeah, guess where? At the bottom disc, right where it was cut. you don't have sulforaphane anywhere else because that's all an intact food. Now, if you get those bags of pre-cut broccoli or pre-cut kale, pre-cut collard greens, well, then, yeah, God, the whole thing's been chopped up, packed with sulforaphane. But if you just get like a broccoli head, well, then you're probably even cutting off that bottom disc. And so you want to hack and hold, chop, wait 45 minutes before cooking it. That'll destroy the enzyme. Doesn't matter though, because sulforaphane is already produced within that time. All right, and that'll be it for today. Thank you so much, everybody. I encourage everyone. Oh, let me one last time throw up this upcoming webinar if you haven't seen it. And I have a July webinar on mycotoxins. So stay tuned.